Nadab and Abihu, the shocking consequences of disobedience revealed in God's divine plan, Bible. In the wilderness of Sinai, where the mighty presence of Yahweh had descended upon the mountain as fire and smoke, a covenant was about to be etched into the hearts of his people. Freshly liberated from the chains of Egypt, the Israelites stood poised to enter into an everlasting relationship with their God. Aaron the high priest was consecrated alongside his sons, Nadab and Abihu, chosen to officiate and serve in the newly erected tabernacle, the very dwelling place of the Almighty among them. As dawn broke, cool winds whispered through the encampment, heralding a new day filled with divine possibility. The sunlight began to paint the horizon with golden hues as Nadab and Abihu gathered their brass censers. The enormity of their calling sent a thrill reverberating through their young hearts. They were called to serve in holiness, tasked with offering incense and sacrifices. Yet amid the awe of their sacred duty, an audacious boldness flickered within. "Let us bring forth fire from our own hearths," they conspired in hushed tones, believing that their flames would be worthy to incense the Lord. This decision, though seemingly innocent, was rooted in a rebellious departure from divine instruction, a fleeting thought overshadowed by the revelation of God's holy presence. With hearts racing and a sense of exhilaration, the sons of Aaron approached the altar, their censers ablaze with the unholy fire. The assembly of Israel stood in reverent silence, unaware of the impending tragedy that loomed just beyond their sight. A thick cloud of acrid smoke filled the air, the scent heavy with the stench of disobedience rather than the sweet aroma of obedience. Suddenly, without warning, a fire burst forth from the Holy of Holies. It was a blaze of divine judgment consuming Nadab and Abihu before the horror-stricken eyes of the entire congregation. Gasps filled the air, a primal sound that reverberated through the camp, marking the firm boundaries of God's holiness. The aspirations of the young priests were extinguished in an instant, the flames casting shadows over the untamed wilderness, and a stark reminder of their covenantal duties. Moses dashed to the scene burdened with foreboding as he approached Aaron, paralyzed in anguish. This is what the Lord meant when he said, "Among those who are near me, I will be sanctified." Moses proclaimed with a heavy heart, the weight of divine disappointment settling like a thick fog over the two. The realization struck Aaron with a thunderous effect, echoing in the depths of his soul. His sons had recklessly succumbed to the allure of their own wisdom, casting aside the sacred warnings bestowed upon them by God. As the remnants of Nadab and Abihu lay smoldering in the silence, tension coursed through the gathered Israelites. They were witnesses to more than a tragedy. They bore the heavy responsibility of internalizing a critical lesson, a reminder of the immutable sanctity of divine commandments. What would they glean from the ashes of this harrowing event? What price would their own fidelity command in their approach to worship and reverence? Questions hung thick in the atmosphere, the fate of Nadab and Abihu transcending their individual lives, marking a deep imprint upon the covenant community entrusted with divine promises. Would they tread in the fear of the Lord, or would the seductive pull of personal ambition lead them astray? The embers of this divine reckoning would continue to flicker in the minds of those gathered, prompting deep reflection on their own commitment to holy obedience. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As the smoke cleared, the echoes of conviction rang through the camp, urging each Israelite to confront the gravity of their divine calling. The strains of lament filled the space, for Nadab and Abihu's darkened fate served as a cautionary tale in the unfolding narrative of God's people. What awaited the Israelites as they approached their God? Would they extend their hands in faithful worship or draw back in reverent fear of disobedience? The air buzzed with a profound sense of wonder and trepidation, leaving them to reckon with their trajectory, a group poised on the brink of covenant and consequently the suffocating weight of accountability. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell Aaron your brother that he shall not come at all times into the holy place within the veil before the mercy seat which is on the ark, lest he die, for I will appear in the cloud above the mercy seat." Thus, the weighty words of the Lord reverberated through the camp, a solemn reminder of the standards of holiness required for those who would approach him. Moses conveyed the message with gravity, the assembly listening intently, their hearts stirred by the recent loss. "For the Lord our God is a consuming fire. He is a jealous God." Deuteronomy 4:24. With these words, the people were drawn deeper into reflection on their covenant with Yahweh. Their hearts were caught between reverence and fear, recognizing the fragile boundary that determined their standing with the Almighty. Aaron, stricken by loss, fell silent. His heart shattered like glass under the weight of his son's disobedience. He began to compose himself, though the sorrow etched upon his face was unmistakable. "It is well with my soul," he whispered to himself, reinforcing the faith that had bound him to God even through personal heartbreak. The fire of God's judgment was severe, yet linked irrevocably to his holiness. As the day wore on, the other priests gathered around Aaron, their faces pale with the specter of what had transpired. They summoned courage, acknowledging their own fear. "What are we to do now, in the light of such a divine act?" one of them spoke, voice shaking. Moses put a reassuring hand on Aaron's shoulder. "We must rise from this tragedy. Let us clarify the instructions of the Lord, lest we fall into the same folly. God desires obedience more than sacrifice," he said, recalling the words of the prophet Samuel to Saul, 1 Samuel 15:22. The echoes of their leaders propelled the Israelites to recalibrate their understanding of worship. In the following days, they gathered at the foot of Mount Sinai. Moses summoned the elders of Israel and laid bare the requirements of officiating at the altar. The law was given with renewed fervor, stipulating sacrifices, offerings, and the parameters within which they were to worship. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, when any one of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of the livestock, of the herd and of the flock." Leviticus 1:1-2. The people nodded in submission, the importance of obedience sinking into their hearts. For every act of service rendered in the tabernacle, every prayer whispered into the air, they would be reminded of the essential cost of their covenant with God. No longer would they risk the dire consequences of disobedience. Yet among the crowd a flicker of dissent stirred. Korah, son of Izhar, son of Kohath, son of Levi, rose with insidious intent. His heart filled with pride and ambition, he gathered a band of followers and began to challenge the authority of Moses and Aaron, declaring, "You take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" Numbers 16:3. As murmurs of discontent echoed through the camp, Moses fell on his face, seeking divine guidance amid the brewing storm. Unbeknownst to them, the perils of rebellion loomed large, a reminder of the weighty lessons still unlearned in the hearts of God's people. What fate awaited the seditious ones? Would they tempt the wrath of the Almighty once more, or could the spirit of unity and worship prevail? As the air crackled in tension, a path of divine intervention awaited, poised to reveal the depths of God's sovereign plan for his people. And Moses arose and gathered the assembly of the children of Israel, for the words of Korah had stirred unrest among them. With a heavy heart, he addressed the congregation, saying, "Hear now, you sons of Levi. Is it a small thing to you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the work of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to them?" Numbers 16:8-9. With these words, he reminded them of their sacred calling and the distinct honor they bore. Yet Korah's rebellion ensnared the hearts of others, and they rallied around him. "We are all holy, and the Lord is with us," they shouted defiantly, but the spirit of disobedience was cloaked in self-righteousness. As Moses gazed upon the gathered throng, he understood the gravity of their defiance, and he fell upon his face once more, imploring the Lord for resolution. The Lord spoke to Moses, declaring, "Separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment." Numbers 16:21. Fear gripped Moses as he understood the divine intent behind these words. With urgency, he turned to Aaron, instructing him to take a censer and quicken to the altar, that he might make atonement for the people, for a great plague had begun to break out in the midst of their rebellion. With the incense in hand, Aaron ran amid the people, fervently offering prayers for mercy, bearing the burden of intercession. "Lord, do not let your anger burn against them for one man's sin," he cried out, the smoke of the incense rising like prayers before the throne of grace. Yet the proud spirits of Korah and his company remained unrepentant, and in a moment designed by divine decree, the ground beneath them opened wide, swallowing them whole along with their households and all their possessions. As the earth closed upon them, a loud cry resounded through the assembly, a stark reminder of the consequences of defiance against the Holy One of Israel. And all Israel who were around them fled at their cry, for they said, "Lest the earth swallow us up too." Numbers 16:34. But the calamity did not end there. Fire overwhelmed the censers of Korah's followers, consuming them in their rebellion. The people stood in stunned silence, realizing the weight of their transgression against the Almighty. And the Lord instructed Moses once more, saying, "Tell Eleazar the son of Aaron the priest to take up the censers out of the burning and scatter the fire some distance away, for they are holy." Numbers 16:37. This act served as a testimony to the community, engraved as a reminder of divine holiness and the consequences of approaching it in a manner unfit. As the days unfolded, the community mourned, yet lessons etched into their hearts would not be forgotten. They had witnessed the consuming fire of God's judgment and the fervent mercy of Aaron's intercession. The delicate balance between these two truths lay heavily upon them. Yet a deeper layer of God's sovereign plan began to unfold. God spoke again to Moses, "Gather the rods of each tribe. I will make known whom I have chosen." Numbers 17:2-3. As they witnessed this divine act, hearts began to stir and whispers rose among them. What would God reveal? Who would emerge as his chosen instrument amid such chaos? Thus the divine mystery lingered in the hearts of the people, reflecting their fear and awe of the sovereign will of the Lord, ensnared in the tension of judgment and grace, waiting for the revelation of his promise. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses spoke unto the children of Israel, saying, "Gather the leaders of your tribes, that ye may bring forth your rods, each man according to his house." Numbers 17:6. And the people obeyed, each tribe presenting their rod before the Lord as Moses had commanded. Each rod carried the name of its father, the name of the tribe inscribed upon it, a symbol of authority and calling. Then the Lord spoke unto Moses, "And it shall come to pass that the man's rod whom I shall choose shall blossom, and I will make to cease from me the murmurings of the children of Israel." Numbers 17:5. Thus the assembly awaited in silence, their hearts filled with expectation of what God would unveil. The rods were laid in the tabernacle of the congregation, a sacred chamber veiled from common sight, where the presence of the Lord dwelled. And the next day Moses entered into the tabernacle, and behold, the rod of Aaron, the representative of the tribe of Levi, had budded and blossomed. It had yielded almonds, a miraculous sign of divine favor and selection. Numbers 17:8. The people beheld the visible evidence of God's choice, and awe fell upon them as they recognized the hand of the Almighty at work. Moses brought forth the rod before the children of Israel. "Look upon the Lord's chosen," he declared, and the crowd murmured in astonishment, fear gripping their hearts as they witnessed the unfolding of God's will. They fell upon their faces, recognizing the seriousness of their earlier demands against God's appointed leadership. But the Lord addressed Moses, saying, "Bring Aaron's rod again before the testimony, to be kept for a token against the rebels, and thou shalt quite take away their murmurings from me, that they die not." Numbers 17:10. The rod was set before the Ark of the Covenant, a reminder of the consequence of disobedience and the sacredness of God's order. In those days of uncertainty, the people's conversations turned in hushed tones, pondering the depths of God's governance. "What is the fate of the unfaithful?" they whispered, as stories of Korah and his followers echoed in their minds, a testament to God's justice tempered by his mercy through Aaron's intercession. And it happened as they returned to their tents that the Lord commanded Moses again, saying, Thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, If any man cometh nigh to bring a sacrifice, let him do so as I have commanded, that he may find favor in my sight. For there is a way that leads to life and a way that leads to death. Numbers 18:2. The sacred warning was issued, and a fear of the Lord was restored among the people. They began to understand that divine authority was not to be questioned nor rebelled against, and that the Lord would protect his appointed. Yet still, the hearts of some lingered in discontent, seeking to understand why God had set boundaries around his holiness. As time passed, the Lord's voice was heard among them once more. And I shall set a limit, and it shall be known to all as my covenant. For though my judgments are severe, my grace shall abound yet more. Romans 5:20, inspired application. Thus within the hallowed camp, an anticipation grew, a fleeting promise embedded within the hearts of the faithful. If God could choose one among the Levites, what could he do with the hearts of all Israel? The vision of his future plan loomed ahead, and a question echoed eternally in the breath of the community. Who else might he choose to fulfill his purposes in the earth? And it came to pass in those days that the Lord spoke again unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and let them know that I desire for them to be holy, even as I am holy. For I have taken you out of the land of Egypt to be a chosen people unto myself. Leviticus 11:44. Moses gathered the assembly of the people, and he recited the words of the Lord. The children of Israel listened intently, their hearts straining to grasp the significance of their calling. You are to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, he declared. Exodus 19:6. Attention turned to their covenant with God, a bond that set them apart in the world. Yet in shadows lingered those whose hearts remained unyielded. Among the congregation were Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron who served into the office of priests, but a certain lust for innovation stirred within them. They pondered, Can we not offer unto the Lord in our own manner? For surely he accepts the heart's desire. Exodus 30:9. Thus, emboldened by folly, they approached the altar with unholy fire, contrary to the command of their father and the ordinances of the Lord. And the fire descended from heaven and consumed Nadab and Abihu, leaving nothing but ashes upon the ground. Leviticus 10:2. Fear gripped the hearts of the people as they beheld the swift and severe judgment. The sound of their cries echoed in the camp, a somber reminder of the weight of disobedience and the holiness of God. Moses, witnessing their demise, sought to comfort the assembly. He declared, This is that which the Lord spake, saying, I will be sanctified in them that come nigh me, and before all the people I will be glorified. Leviticus 10:3. A chilling silence fell upon the congregation, and the weight of the Lord's glory bore heavily upon them. Then the Lord commanded Aaron, Do not let your heart be troubled, nor let your head be uncovered, for you are set apart to lead my people in holiness. Leviticus 10:6-7. And Aaron held his peace, for he understood the sanctity of his role and the severity of his son's transgression. In his heart was a swelling grief, yet also a profound realization of divine holiness and justice. As the days unfolded, the hearts of the Israelites were filled with questions. What does this signify for us? Can any approach the Lord? They wondered among themselves. Their reverence for God deepened, knitting a sense of urgency and awareness of their own standing before the Almighty. Then the Lord spoke unto Moses once more, proclaiming, And thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, A stranger that cometh nigh shall be put to death, for I dwell in the midst of a people consecrated to me. Numbers 18:7. Through this decree, the people were reminded that they must tread carefully within the sacred boundaries established by their God. In the echoes of silence that followed, curiosity brewed. When will God reveal his true purpose for his beloved Israel? They pondered, remembering the blossoms of Aaron's rod, a testament to divine choice. The compelling mystery thrummed with promise. If such was the fate of the unfaithful, what glorious wonders awaited upon those who remained faithful. And thus the stage was set for the unfolding of God's greater plan. With hearts laid bare, the question lingered in the air. What more would the Lord reveal to those who walked in his ways, and who else might he choose to fulfill his sovereign purposes? And the Lord continued to speak unto Moses, saying, Gather unto me the elders of Israel, that I may declare unto them the statutes and judgments which I shall set before you. Exodus 24:1. Thus Moses called the elders, and they came forth, their eyes filled with awe and trepidation, as they approached the mountain where lightning flickered, and the thunder roared. Behold, the Lord our God has spoken in fire and smoke, he declared, as the ground shook with the presence of the Almighty. This is a day unlike any other, for he has chosen us to be his people and to dwell in his commandments. The elders, once confident in their counsel, found themselves humbled before the glory of the Lord. Moses relayed all that he had received, the words of covenant that were etched in their hearts. You shall not make for yourselves a graven image, nor shall you bow down unto them, he warned, invoking the memory of their ancestors' idols in Egypt. The people affirmed with one voice, All the words which the Lord has spoken we will do, Exodus 24:3. Yet in the shadows, doubt whispered uneasily in many hearts. Some among them exchanged wary glances, recalling Nadab and Abihu, questioning, Is it enough to obey only in appearance? Does our God require our hearts too? Distrust nestled in the hearts of the people, souls just beginning to understand the dire consequences of disobedience. The Lord observed the turmoil lingering in their midst and instructed Moses, I shall give thee the patterns of the tabernacle, the dwelling place of my presence among my people. Exodus 25:9. As he spoke, the vision unfolded before Moses, patterns of gold, blue, and fine linen adorned with cherubims, a holy place fashioned for communion with the divine. The tent would be a refuge for the faithful, a beacon of hope in their wandering. Moses' heart swelled with joy and dread alike, for he knew that such a glorious undertaking demanded unwavering devotion. Who will build this sanctuary? Moses wondered. The Lord responded, Let every man whose heart is stirred bring forth an offering unto me. Exodus 25:2. So a fervor ignited among the people. Craftsmen and women raised their hands, eager to give of their goods, gold, silver, threads, and gems. But among the excitement, there lingered hesitation, for in their hearts, echoing questions persisted. How can we be sure of our standing before him? Meanwhile, the sons of Korah, false leaders emerging within the ranks, began to stir dissent, saying, Must Aaron alone be glorified? Is he truly the one whom God hath chosen? Their murmurs spread like wildfire, sowing discord among the faithful. Moses fell to his face in prayer, crying unto the Lord for the fate of the misguided. Put not the innocent in jeopardy because of the foolishness of these men, he pleaded. And the Lord, in his mercy, reassured him, Stand fast, for I am still their God. I will sift the faithful from the unfaithful. As the call for the tabernacle went forth, the people faced a choice, either to further enshrine their hearts with God or be swept away by the tides of rebellion. The question surged through the camp. Will we follow in the footsteps of the faithful or walk the path of the unholy? Thus a critical juncture loomed, and God's sovereign plan flickered on the horizon. What trials would lay ahead to test the hearts of his chosen? What wondrous works would flow from the hands of those who dared to remain faithful? As they stood on the precipice of destiny, each heart awaited a revelation of the Almighty's purpose, echoing the prayer upon their lips. Lord, reveal thy ways before us. And it came to pass after many days that the Lord spoke again unto Moses, saying, Come up to me into the mount and be there, and I will give thee tables of stone, and the law and commandments which I have written, that thou mayest teach them. Exodus 24:12. Thus Moses ascended the heights of Sinai, leaving the people below, their hearts stirred with hope and fear. The clouds thickened around the mountain, and the voice of the Lord thundered, enveloping Moses in his presence. He received the tablets inscribed with his divine law, the covenant established for generations to guide his people. As the heavenly radiance filled the air around him, Moses beheld the holiness of the commandments and knew this moment was sacred, a gift from the Creator to his chosen. Meanwhile, back in the camp, the children of Israel grew restless. Days turned into weeks, and the mountain loomed as a shadow of uncertainty over the people. Whispers echoed through the multitude, fanned by the sons of Korah. What has become of this Moses? Has he deserted us to perish in the wilderness? they derided, sowing doubt that festered among the hearts of the people. And in desperation, the people approached Aaron, their leader, saying, "Make us gods which shall go before us. For this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what is become of him." Exodus 32:1. Their hearts turned toward idolatry, pleading for a tangible emblem to guide them, forgetting the swift miracles wrought upon their behalf. Aaron, under pressure and alarmed by the rising tide of discontent, yielded to their demands. "Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, of your sons, and of your daughters, and bring them unto me." Exodus 32:2. And so with trembling hands he gathered the gold and crafted a golden calf, declaring, "These be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt." Exodus 32:4. At their proclamation the people rejoiced and feasted before their idol, dancing in revelry, while the anger of the Lord burned hot against them. Their hearts had wandered from the covenant made, and soon the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, "Go, get thee down, for thy people which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves." Exodus 32:7. Moses, torn between justice and mercy, descended from the mountain, the tablets in his hands, their weight feeling heavier with the knowledge of the people's sin. As he drew near the camp, he beheld the revelry, and his anger flared, casting the tablets to the ground, shattering the covenant upon which their future depended. With a heavy heart, Moses turned and approached Aaron, demanding, "What did this people unto thee, that thou hast brought so great a sin upon them?" Exodus 32:21. Aaron, trembling, sought to justify his actions, yet the truth stood bare before Moses' eyes. Amidst the tumult, Moses cried out, "Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me." Exodus 32:26. The Levites answered the call, rallying to his side, motivated by the remembrance of God's mighty acts. With swords drawn, they became instruments of God's judgment, and 3,000 souls fell that day through the disobedience of the people. In this moment of judgment, God's righteousness met humanity's folly, yet in his mercy he would not forsake his people. "I will send an angel before thee," he declared, promising to lead them through the wilderness. Yet the weight of sin remained, and Moses interceded, pleading, "If thy presence go not with me, carry us not up hence." Exodus 33:15. The Lord responded, "My presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest." Exodus 33:14. Thus, in the midst of their rebellion, God revealed his unwavering grace, sustaining his covenant people even in consequence. As Moses adorned the new tables with the law once more, a fresh resolve took root in the hearts of the chosen. Yet in the shadows, the dissenters plotted, ever seeking to unravel the purposes of God. In their hearts they questioned, "What further calamity shall befall us?" And so it was that a divine echo resounded through the camp. "I have called you to be a people set apart. Will you heed my commands, or shall I turn my face from you?" Thus the stage was set for a further unveiling of God's sovereign plan. Would they choose the path of faithfulness, or would doubt continue to gnaw at their spirits, leading them toward destruction? And it came to pass on the morrow that the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, "Come up unto me into the mount, and be there. And I will give thee the patterns of the tabernacle, and the instruments thereof, and thou shalt make them according to the shew of the things which thou hast seen." Exodus 25:40. Moses, filled with anticipation, ascended the mountain anew. The cloud of the Lord covered the mount, and the glory of the Lord abode upon Sinai, like the consuming fire. In this sacred place, Moses was enveloped in divine majesty, and he was awed by the profound revelation of God's dwelling among his people. As days turned into nights in the presence of the Most High, the people of Israel below grew anxious once again. They witnessed the fiery cloud, and fear gripped their hearts as they beheld the solitude of their leader on the heights. In the confusion of their hearts, they turned once more to Aaron, whispering with fear, "Make us a minister to mediate between us and our God." Yet Aaron reminded them of the great deliverance from Egypt. The Lord our God is a jealous God. We must not forget his ways. But doubt had rooted deeply, drawing them into rebellion. The sons of Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, emboldened by the chaos of dissent, conspired in secret, seeking to carve their own path, intending to offer strange fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded. Thus a time of reckoning approached, for the ways of man were ever before the Lord. On the day when they brought their fire before the altar, a fire from the Lord consumed Nadab and Abihu, and they died before the Lord. This great judgment fell upon them, a solemn reminder of the holiness and righteousness of God. Moses turned his face, and he said unto Aaron, This is it that the Lord spake, saying, I will be sanctified in them that come nigh me, and before all the people I will be glorified. Leviticus 10:3. Aaron held his peace, bearing the fierce weight of the consequences of disobedience within his heart, his own sons lost in the flames of divine holiness. The people trembled as the news spread throughout the camp. They discerned the severity of disobedience and the holiness of the God they served. And in their hearts they acknowledged anew the weight of the covenant, understanding that their path must be in alignment with the word of the Lord. Moses returned to the mount, seeking words of intercession, for the people were afraid. O Lord, he cried out, this people have sinned a great sin, yet give them mercy. The Lord's response echoed with clarity. I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show mercy on whom I will show mercy. Exodus 33:19. And in compassionate guidance, the Lord instructed Moses with fresh laws, defining the very essence of his covenant with Israel, that they might walk in his ways and not perish. You shall make for me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them. Exodus 25:8. As Moses emerged from the mount, carrying the renewed commandments and revelations of grace, the people stood poised, their hearts trembling yet hopeful. They sensed that despite their waywardness, the Lord was steadfast in his promises, ready to lead them through the wilderness, bringing forth a nation destined for greatness. But as the weight of the covenant pressed heavy upon their shoulders, a divine foreboding lingered, whispering through the camp. Will you heed my voice, O Israel, and shun the paths of disobedience, or shall the fire of judgment yet rend your hearts? Thus the stage was set for a greater revelation, for in their choices lay the unfolding of God's sovereign plan, a path lit by obedience and faith, or one shadowed by doubt and destruction. And it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Moses again, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Exodus 19:6. The words of the Almighty reverberated with purpose, stirring in Moses a sense of destiny that he knew would shape his people. Moses descended from the mountain, bearing the tablets of stone, inscribed by the finger of God. He beheld the people, trembling and watching with fear, for the fire had consumed those who dared to approach the holiness of the Lord without reverence. Fearful whispers coursed through the camp, and uncertainty gripped many hearts. Shall we remain as strangers to our God? They murmured amongst themselves, questioning whether they would ever know his ways. Yet deep within, a longing for true fellowship with their Creator began to bud amidst their fear. Then Moses raised his voice high and declared, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. Deuteronomy 6:4-5. The fervent declaration resonated in the hearts of many, igniting a spark of hope that perhaps they could yet commune with the God who had delivered them. Yet still the path was steep. Their history bore the weight of impatience and rebellion. In the shadow of the mountain, some saw the eroded trust. They turned to their own understanding, whilst others felt the pull of Moses' words, yearning to obey and serve. But they struggled, for their hearts were torn between their desires and the unyielding call of holiness. And Moses called Aaron unto him, saying, Consecrate yourselves and draw near to the Lord, for he is merciful, and he will not forsake us, his people. Leviticus 10:1-2. Aaron, shaken by the loss of his sons, sought to forge a new beginning, praying fervently for wisdom and strength. We must restore what has been broken, he replied. Our God seeks those who will worship him in spirit and truth. The people, moved by the gravity of Moses' message, gathered around the base of the mount. Let us not be like Nadab and Abihu, seeking to walk in our own ways, one cried out. Let us approach our God with humility and reverence, echoed another. and so they humbled themselves, laying aside their burdens of doubt. Then Moses began to relay the commandments anew, explaining the feasts and the sacrifices that would lead them to communion with the holy, instructing them on how to cultivate the sacred space of the tabernacle, that God might dwell among them in peace. "Bring me an offering, and I will manifest myself," the Lord promised through his servant. "For I delight in a broken and contrite heart. These are the offerings I will accept." Psalm 51:17. The people listened intently, and a spirit of repentance began to wash over them, each heart recalling the gravity of the divine holiness. But unbeknownst to them, the Lord had something far greater in store. For the impending revelation within the tabernacle would reveal not just his presence, but the very essence of his salvation that was yet to be fully unveiled. A plan that spanned generations, leading not merely to a physical sanctuary, but to the ultimate sacrifice who would fulfill all righteousness. Thus their choices loomed before them. Would they be a people set apart, a light to the nations, or would they wander in disobedience, missing the fullness of God's sovereign plan? As Moses stepped aside, the weight of anticipation hung thick in the air, and the Lord spoke once more, "For I will gather unto me a people from afar, and a new covenant shall I establish." And all awaited the fulfillment of God's glorious promise, a promise that would change the very trajectory of humanity. And thus, in the wilderness of Sinai, beneath the vast expanse of heaven, God's mighty hand unfolded the tapestry of his sovereign plan. The people, shaped through trials and triumphs, stood at a critical juncture, their hearts tumultuous, yet yearning for his grace. The weight of loss from Nadab and Abihu still loomed heavy, but the lessons of holiness, reverence, and the righteous path began to crystallize among the congregation. Moses, filled with renewed wisdom and resolute purpose, called forth the elders of Israel. "Hear me, O you faithful, you who have witnessed the hand of the Almighty, you who stand on the brink of destiny. Today, we must choose to align our hearts with his will." His voice rang with authority, grounding in the acknowledgement of their shared failures and unyielding hope. As they gathered in formation, the whispers of the past settled, and they recalled the gravity of divine judgment juxtaposed with a longing for mercy. Among them, Aaron, now emboldened after the trial of his heart, stepped forth. "Fear not, but draw near to him with reverence. Let us remember the kindness of our God, who, spite of our waywardness, extendeth his arms of grace to us." Echoing Aaron's words, the people responded, "We will return to his commandments. We shall not walk in the way of the disobedient, but rather we shall retread the path of righteousness." With hearts ablaze, they sought to re-establish their sacred covenant, gathering offerings and preparing their sacrifices at the tabernacle, wherein the very presence of Yahweh would dwell. The Lord then spoke to Moses, enjoining him to deepen their covenant. "You shall tell the children of Israel, if you obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people." Exodus 19:5. In that moment, hope ignited in the hearts of those assembled. A treasure. They would be a people set apart, molded for divine purpose. Moses lifted his hands toward heaven. "Behold, we enter now the fullness of his plan, for within us lies the seeds of promise. This covenant shall remind us of who we are, his chosen, a light unto the nations." And indeed, a spirit of fervent devotion enveloped the camp as they drew near, bringing forth their offerings. The air swirled with the sweet aroma of obedience, a stark contrast to the bitter ashes of rebellion left in the wake of Nadab and Abihu. Days evolved into weeks, a tapestry woven with sacred rituals and holy observances. The voice of God permeated their gatherings. "You shall love your neighbor as yourself. You shall keep my Sabbaths, for they are a sign between me and you." Exodus 31:13. The understanding of his holy ways steeped deeper in their hearts, establishing a grounding that would take root for generations to come. As the people flourished in their obedience, a wave of transformation swept through the camp. Their faces shone with the joy of belonging. They became a community of priests, interceding for one another, knowing the grace they tasted was birthed from the prior trial of fire. The lessons learned from their history shaped their dedication and solidified their resolve. Yet amidst this spiritual renewal, the whispers of discontent still echoed. Some hearts still grappled with pride, longing for influence and recognition. But this time, God, in his unyielding love, fashioned a path for redemption through the faithful. Their testimonies became light against the darkness of rebellion, a reminder of the strength in unity and submission to the divine authority. Then it came to pass that God raised up leaders among the people, those willing to bear the weight of the covenant and guide them faithfully. Moses once again took his place as an intercessor, leading the people into the fullness of the law. He taught them that true obedience sprung from love birthed through relationship. As they marched onward, there arose another generation who recalled the stories, who would tell and retell the account of fire, judgment, and mercy. They would pass down the pillar of a new covenant, foreshadowing a greater good yet to come, the promise of salvation threaded through the lineage of Jesse, who would lead all humanity back to the heart of God. And so it was, through the centuries of trial and devotion, the sovereign plan of God unfolded, revealing a tapestry woven with both human frailty and divine purpose, culminating not just in rules and principles, but in the very essence of God's Son, Jesus Christ, the ultimate sacrifice, the Lamb whose blood would cleanse and restore, inviting all into the community of believers. The cries of repent echoed through history, the invitation to approach the throne of grace confidently. The very essence of holiness was no longer bound to temples and altars, for in Christ, God would dwell within. The people knew that in the depths of their covenant with the Almighty, his faithfulness would endure, even unto the end of all things. Let us not forget this enduring truth. To come near to God is to walk in holiness and to embrace his love. Dear friends, the story of Nadab and Abihu teaches us far more than caution. It beckons us toward the fullness of life found in obedience and surrender. Now, as we reflect upon this powerful journey, I invite you to carry this message forward. Subscribe immediately to this channel to not miss the next powerful biblical stories. Leave a like now and help spread God's word through the algorithm, that many may hear and be transformed by his truth. Comment your spiritual reflections and share how this biblical story has impacted your faith. And don't hesitate to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth, the timeless message of his faithfulness and mercy. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth. Don't wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony. True believers understand the importance of supporting biblical content to reach more souls for Christ.